Hi, so I'm Phil Vose. Am I a senior software engineer nowadays?
Oh, you're so senior.
Something like that, anyway. Yeah, so I'm here to talk to you about automated visual regression testing. We used a tool called Cypress, but I'll have a quick chat around some of the other stuff that we used as well. There we go. It's what happens when you use JavaScript for everything. So we were having a few problems with our testing side. We generally go through and do our own testing rather than have a dedicated QA. So what this has caused is developers aren't always the best testers, if I'm honest. And we were finding a lot of the repetitive testing was getting missed. But being developers, we don't like to manually do those, so we had a look at ways we could automate it, just to kind of clear that up. It was mostly around sort of big regressions, that sort of thing, where we would have issues, where we'd do big visual changes, and they'd go out, and then we'd have missed something during testing. So when we came across that issue, we had a few different things we looked at. We had a look at making reviewers responsible for the testing, so that was shifting a lot more of the testing to the people doing the code review. This would allow the people signing it off to go through and follow basically a checklist to say these things have all been tested. But to be honest, no one wants to do that if they can get away with it. It's quite laborious, and if you're just looking for pixel perfect changes, not the most interesting. So we then had a look at Selenium, which is kind of the industry standard at the moment. There's quite an echo on this, isn't there?
No, it's not too bad.
Is it not too bad? Sorry. So we had a look at Selenium, but it's quite difficult to get set up. The syntax isn't the most user-friendly to developers. You have to use a lot of XPath and stuff like that. Fairly reasonable, but also you have to do a lot of setup in terms of the infrastructure and stuff like that. You'd have to look at Selenium Grid, all those sort of things. It's a lot of work. So one of my colleagues had been messing around with Cypress, which is kind of a replacement for Selenium that has been being developed for the last couple of years by some alternate devs. We had a bit of a mess around trying to just have a spike of doing a very basic journey through. And when we completed that, we found it was quite nice. But we also found some plugins which allowed us to do visual difference regression testing, which you'd normally have to use something like Casper or something a bit more command liney to be able to do previously. So once we'd kind of settled on that and we'd done a bit of sort of spiking on it, because we do everything in Docker, we wanted to get that all set up initially. So we had something running locally and we wanted to convert that into basically a Dockerized thing so we could run it both in our local environment and also within our CI pipeline. So we went through and had a bit of a search on Google, to be honest, to figure out what the nicest place was. And it turns out Cypress provided some Docker images, which I'll show you in a minute. And also there was a nice plugin called Cypress Image Screenshots. That's a link to the Docker image, which I'll share afterwards. Smooth. Anyway, so where's this? That's the wrong one. Where's the Docker image? I should never do things with live code. So to get the Docker image set up, basically just we use Docker Compose locally, so just basically reference the external Cypress stuff. Can't get it to go to the much better in practice. There we go. So just to bring it in, you basically just include this line here, and you're pretty much set up. There's a couple of little hacks you had to do just to get it not to output about 10,000 lines of extra stuff. So doing that gave us the ability to drop this into our workflow. So we use Circle CI as our CI tool, software as a service visual system. And this stuff was all existing. What we basically added in was these 4 Cypress steps. The first step doing the installation, and then our tests running in sort of a side-by-side way. When we run those tests, we then get a nice output inside, which just basically outputs all of the files, screenshots, snapshots, videos, and any differences. So if you end up with a failing test, you get a very nice screenshot like this outputted, which basically just shows you which pixels have changed. And that just appears in this folder structure, so it's quite easy to access. So as it's running inside the CI, you end up getting this visual side appearing, and it tells you where the screenshots are output. It's very much like Jest, if you've used that previously, in terms of the way all the sides work. And one really good thing with it is when you go through and you commit your baseline changes, you get a nice visual screenshot which shows you basically what someone's changed. So rather than relying on developers to go through and add screenshots to a PR, automatically adds it on there for you. So it saves a bit more developer time as well. So while these tests are running, you get command line output, but what it also does is, because it's running inside Chrome as basically on a headless browser, it can record itself. So it automatically generates videos of each run and shows you the output as it goes through. So this is a passing test. So everything looks green, looks nice, shows you doing the screenshots. But the really good bit is when you go through and you get a failed test, it's a lot easier to debug to see why it failed. Because you might be doing a multi-step journey that you're doing screenshots on or something like that. So it shows you the exact point it failed and where the difference is, diff output is in the file system, so you can go have a look and do the comparison. So you can see we do it for individual components there. So the other big advantage we got was in terms of the syntax, it's really easy to do. Cypress provides them a lot of stuff out of the box. It uses jQuery underneath the hood actually, which is quite cool if you know jQuery syntax. But it also allows you to write your own methods to make it a lot more easy to read and hide some of the complexity for people who might just be having a quick look over to see what the test does. But you can then just jump in and have a look at the differences. So this hide quantcast modal is one of our custom methods. That was a mistake trying to do that. We'll leave that for now. So that's kind of a very high level of how it works and some of the code we've used to put it together. We generally go through and screenshot all of our individual components. We've done that because we came across a couple of challenges while we were doing it, mostly around Chrome's rendering, to be honest, because it uses Chrome under the hood. The main challenge being whenever you do lots of scrolling within Chrome, you get a banding effect within the screenshots. So you end up with basically elements repeating over. So what we did was we went and matched it up to work very similar to the atomic design system we use. So we have a screenshot per component at all the various viewports that we use within a page. But this has also caused us to have quite a lot of tests. I think we're running around 120 at the moment that go through. So that allows us to basically test 120 different scenarios, although we do those at various viewports as well, so it expands a bit further. But we found that takes around 5 minutes per 40 tests. So what we've tried to do is run them side by side on a per brand basis. So it takes 5 minutes in total instead of 5 minutes one after the other. We'd like to try and do a bit more side-by-side testing. You can use a Cypress service they provide called Cypress Dashboard that does that. So we're looking into that, or maybe just splitting out more tests. Because we use Circle, we can just spin up as many images as we like. But it has helped us quite a lot, to be honest. It's allowed us to catch a lot more minor visual regression issues automatically. We don't have to worry about spending loads of extra time testing. We can just concentrate on the feature that we've changed for testing. So all of those repetitive tests that you do just to make sure something you've changed doesn't affect a component outside of where you've been working on really helps with that. So things we want to change in it and going forward. As I said earlier, we want to try and improve that time it takes to run the tests, either by throwing more hardware at it or maybe looking at some of the synchronicity. And also, we kind of want to do more journey-based testing as well. So at the minute we concentrate on single components in place on the page. We want to look at going through each of the pages and then recording journeys and then seeing how user interaction affects those pages, mostly around ad clicks and stuff like that. So that's really quick through. Any questions?
Can you compare screenshots? Do they have to be exactly identical to recognise that you have like a line of this size text with this subheading?
So we go through and we make sure the content's the same. So we do some manipulation to our points where we go and fetch the data. So it always forces it to have the same data when it's doing the comparison.
Okay. So would it recognise like there's a list of data? It would have to literally be the same data every time?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's basically doing visual testing, not data testing. So you always have to make sure they're rendering the same content or data.
Do you do any cross-browser testing?
At the moment, we're concentrating mostly on Chrome. We're looking at implementing Safari as well. That covers about 99% of our browser stats usage, though. Everything outside that's really long tail 1%. So it's probably something we wouldn't bother doing. But it should be something you should be able to integrate with Firefox as well. Outside of that, it's all just dependent on if the browsers support the particular hooks that Cypress uses.
Do you test user journeys? If so, how big they are? And if you do, how stable is it?
So we've only tested it in a spike so far. We've not tested it end to end, but it's something we want to do. During the spike it works really well because it basically just goes through. It's really good at doing the selectors via jQuery. It's a lot easier than using XPath to find stuff because it's not reliant on the parent always being there.
Split two-part question. Did you have no visual tests or like browser tests whatsoever before you started this?
So we have just snapshots before we started putting this in place. So that was markup comparison, making sure the markup was exactly the same, CSS was exactly the same. But when you come and do a refactor, where you're changing the markup of the CSS, but you want it to stay visually the same. So for us, the big one was moving from an old school grid system over to Flexbox and CSS Grid. We wanted it to visually match, but we didn't want to. We wanted to change the code in the background.
So with that addition, how many extra minutes and how much build time have you added on to your total? Not like serial, but just if you add them all up.
So I couldn't tell you because we run a continuous integration. We put a lot of stuff straight out, and it's been running for at least sort of 4 or 5 months now. But the really good thing is, because it's in the CI side, you can commit it, let the CI go through and do the test. You don't have to be actively watching it until the output comes in. And you generally get an email from CI and even Slack messages saying, this build has failed, go have a look why.
Yeah, I was wondering if you knew how much it cost you to do.
So it's with the CI, we're charged by the number of images we use. The maximum number of images we can use simultaneously, so it doesn't cost us any extra to be running more tests.
It just costs a bit.
Hold 1 second, I think I'm badly corrected.
I paid the Circle bill. Yeah, it did. So previously we ran with 3 concurrent containers on Circle, and that was fine. Once we started wanting to run visual regression with 3 concurrent containers in every single feature branch, all of a sudden we ended up with some quite big build queues. So we upped that. I think we've got 6 concurrent containers running now. So it's an extra 150 quid a month. It's pretty small beans in the grand scheme of things.
How big's the team? Like 6 or 8 people or something?
There's 6 of us, if I commit code, which doesn't happen often.
That's usually when it picks it up. Did I say that loud? The back and the left. Oh, who are you?
Up to you. I wasn't.
I'm just not very good at facial awareness.
You mentioned at the start that devs don't make very good QAs. How do you handle that with your automation?
So it's mostly around to get rid of the more monotonous side of testing. So getting rid of having to do the same thing every time. By doing that, it allows the devs to just concentrate on the particular feature they've changed to test. So it makes it much smaller in terms of what they have to test each time. So generally, people then pay more attention to it. Because it's more, I've found more it's the amount of time it takes to test that generally puts devs off, rather than, and doing the monotonous stuff. Generally, like if you want to update a database, you wouldn't go through each individual field in the database, you'd write a script to do it. It's kind of a similar idea. Go on the right.
Assuming you have QAs in a company, who would you...
It's a big assumption.
Okay, if you don't have QAs, why don't you have QAs?
Wow, that's a good question.
This wasn't a question, but I'm intrigued now.
No, it's a fair question. I'm very conscious that there's probably some QAs in the room, so I'm going to try and word the answer as carefully as possible. The reality is that the Lab Bible group of websites don't do a lot. We have a home page, a category page, a tag page, and an article page, and we need them to render correctly, and we need them to serve ads, and that's mostly what we look after. There's a lot that goes on in the background to make those things happen. That's where the complexity is. But on the front end of things, on the user experience side of things, I've found that test automation has been enough to make sure that it's good enough. I think once we're starting to work on things that have got more complicated user journeys, so for example, if we were to build a new content management system, for example, then we might want to reassess that decision. But as things stand at the moment, I don't feel like a QA would be able to add a huge amount on top of what we've been able to automate. I'm pretty confident you disagree with that. So more than happy to have a beer over that afterwards. In the car park.
Nobody's told us there's no car park yet. Which is scary. There was a question over there earlier.
Did you ask your question?
No, but that
Oh.
was a better question.
You can ask a second one if you want.
No, that's fine. I'm fine with that.
My second question was just about ensuring test coverage and things like that. I think Dave answered that with a relatively small surface.
We generally, the main way we do the test coverage is it's one test per component. So, well, one test per organism if we're doing an atomic design. So as long as those match up, that generally covers you for 99% of stuff. So.
I know you were talking before about ad view times being basically the most important thing for the business. And you also said that the speed, well, the response times have gone down massively. I'm guessing that's not time to render because part of the test. Has he thought about testing that before?
So we don't test render time with Cypress. We have several other tools that we do for that. We use Lighthouse to go through and do that. We have some monitoring tools within the ad service we use as well. The main reason it's gone down is we've probably reduced the amount of JavaScript on the pages by probably 3 or 4 meg since we refactored to this system. We suffered a lot from having Google Tag Manager, everyone's favourite piece of equipment, where it just had basically every single tracking tag known to man stuffed into it. And then all of that would have to run before the ad systems kicked in. So by removing those, that's just massively increased the speed of the ad loading.
So the test environments that you run the Cypress, do they have all that sort of injected graph?
Yeah. Yeah, so everything we run, our feature ranchers, which is the test environments we run Cypress against, are duplicates of the production environment, but just with less resources. So it's always an exact duplicate copied across. We check out from Git each time.
It's less controversial this time. Well, I'm using Cypress at the moment, and the problem I've got is effectively distinguishing between, we use Jasmine for unit tests, and effectively knowing what should be in Jasmine and what should be in Cypress. It's getting a bit messy, there isn't really, it's blurred at the moment, so there's duplication, which isn't a bad thing in itself, so I'd be interested, putting aside the QAs, where you see kind of the lines for, you've mentioned Jest before.
So Jest we primarily use for unit testing at the moment, so small pieces of code. We do have a few integration tests that cover sort of the longer standing stuff, but again, code base on the front end side is less complicated than you might get in sort of more formed web apps. I'd say we're mostly going to concentrate Cypress on the visual side. So anything that needs visual testing, we'll use Cypress for. Anything that needs code or functionality or data testing, that's something we'd use something like Jest or Jasmine for. So you will sometimes get some overlap where you want to test data and visual, and you'd probably do both.
I think I heard you speaking earlier about A/B testing. Is that with Optimizely type of technology?
Yes, we use Optimize, but as a server-side solution. So we have our own.
If you had any challenges around like someone putting an Optimizely thing running on and it's visually the same, but then the button's been moved somewhere else, so it's now red instead of green or something?
No, so we do everything cookie-based in the background. That allows us to then switch the A/B test in the background. So we can, if we want, run Cypress against the A/B test and the standard test. It's not something we've done so far. because we've mostly been moving from a legacy system which doesn't have this sort of technology available to it, to a new system. Cool, I can escape. Thank you everyone.